by Andrea McElroy-Rose, a partner and head of Pinsent Mason's Belfast office. She has over 25 years experience. She is a divorced mother of 2, and she is an absolute passionate advocate of diversity and inclusion, with a particular emphasis on the advancement of women in business. She sits on the Pinsent Mason's Global Inclusion Board as their gender representative and heads the Pinsent Mason's Project Sky initiative. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Andrea with me today, and later on we're going to ask some questions. I'm going to ask her some questions and really try and get underneath the bonnet of what Pinsent Masons are doing to attract and keep more senior women in their firm. For those of you who are not familiar with Pinsent Masons, they are a multinational law firm who looks at clients' businesses' needs differently. This means they don't just apply lawyers to solve clients' problems. They instead deploy a wide range of professional disciplines enabled by people, process, and technology to deliver a global professional service with law at its core. So Andrea, may I kick off with the first, the most obvious question, but without beating about the bush. It is so well documented that the legal industry as a whole is struggling to keep and retain senior women like yourselves in the legal profession. So therefore, I'd really like to understand what are the core issues that the whole industry is facing, and then in particular, what are Pinsent Masons doing to tackling those issues?
Thank you. Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm delighted to be able to talk about this Project Sky. It is, as you've identified, it is a problem. I think probably all law firms have the same problem. We have no problem attracting women. There are lots of women who come into law, both as fee earners in business operations. But I think law firms have always had a difficulty in making sure that they retain the best talent and promote women in the way that they should. This was identified in 2013, going back that far, by Pinsent Masons, and it led to the creation of Project Sky. And Project Sky came to being in Pinsent Masons as a way of tackling the fact that we didn't have real gender balance in terms of partnership and senior leadership roles. So it was a problem that was shared with lots of law firms. I think most law firms are tackling it now, but that's how Project Sky came into being. And the objective of Project Sky was to create a better gender balance amongst partnership and senior leadership roles at Pinsent Masons in order to create a better workplace for all. So the intention was that although we concentrated, or the focus at that stage was senior leadership, the idea was that if you started there at the top, it would filter down and create a better gender balance for the firm as a whole. And just to give you an idea of the problem as it was then, in 2013, when this started, we had 17% of the partnership were female, and there were no women, absolutely none, in senior leadership roles. Now, it's not a great statistic. I don't think anyone would pretend that it was. It wasn't me, but at the time, this was started by another female partner and a number of partners with the support of the board. So the problem was recognized. And since then, we have been trying to redress the balance, to make things better, not just with gender, but with race and with lots of other things, to make it a more inclusive firm. We have had a lot of success, but we also recognize that there's still a long way to go.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. But, without beating about the bush, and let's get down to the nitty gritty, what are some of the specific issues that you see time and time again, where women in these roles just hit their head against the proverbial wall and just think, I'm out, I just can't stay, it's not working, my family life is being too compromised, I'm out of here. What are those issues, and what are the specific measures that Pinsent Mason have put in place?
The feedback that we've had, and we have run focus groups and we have done various things to try and get from the people involved, leaving interviews, all sorts of things. The issues seem to be that you get to a certain stage as a woman working in a law firm, and it is just, you don't get the support you feel that you need. The talent tracking and the progress and the promotions all seem to be dealt with through one lens. And a lot of that used to be focused, not so much anymore, on matter-related hours and presenteeism. It was very much a cultural thing that you had to be in the office for these very long hours, whether you had children or not. Unfortunately, at the time that this was perceived to be a problem, or recognized as a problem, at that stage, there really was this imbalance between men looking after their careers and women were the people who looked after children. Now that has changed, and lots of things have changed that dial. But it still remains the case that the majority of childcare is provided by women. And it's not just childcare, it is looking after parents, it's looking after homes. A lot of this responsibility falls on women. And the idea that you were going to work very long hours in offices or on transactions that meant that you would work throughout the night, there was always this perception that you couldn't be promoted because women couldn't do that. Actually, that was never the case. But also, I think we had to rebalance how people performed and what was expected of them. And I think the culture has changed completely anyway. I think both for men and women, it is now recognized, particularly since the pandemic, that we can work in different ways. There was no flexible working, no agile working really 10, 20 years ago. None of that was considered. So that was the problem. There was no flexibility. You had to progress in one way. It was tailored to men by men, not intentionally, but that was just the way it had been done. And we still find, the problem hasn't gone away, but certainly lots of things have been brought in by Pinsent Masons and by other firms to try and redress the balance, because we recognize we really can't afford to lose all this fantastic talent.
Can you give me some examples of the support that you are putting in, and how do you also handle presenteeism and the long hours that is associated with the industry so that women aren't still there burning the midnight oil?
Well, some of that I would have to say, and there were obviously lots of awful things that happened during the pandemic, but Pinsent Masons had always been known as a flexible, agile firm. We did lots of things, put lots of initiatives in place. But actually what we have found is the pandemic has made it acceptable to be working from home for some of the time. I think all of us, myself included, I would never really have worked from home, not on a regular basis, but it is now accepted. Starting point is you don't have to be in an office every day unless you're doing a particular role, and there's very few of those. So you don't have to be in the office every day, which cuts out some of the travel. It's great for all genders. This is not just a female thing, but what it does allow is a bit more accepted flexibility in picking up your children from school or going along to certain things. They were permitted by Pinsent Masons. We always encouraged it, but there's a difference between encouraging it and it being acceptable and for you feeling comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of the partners are doing now, everyone in the firm is doing now, is having this balance between working from home and working in the office. So the presenteeism of actually being in one place for very long hours has gone. Even if you're involved in a transaction. And yes, you can be working late through the night. And that's one of the things of being a lawyer that it's very difficult to get away from. If you do a particular type of transaction, corporate, some of the property ones, some of the banking ones, that's what you do. But it is easier to work around that if you are not required to be in an office all of the time. So some of that has simply been circumstance. And I think that has made it acceptable, but also allowing for the fact that people work differently. We don't particularly state that someone has to work particular hours during the day. If you want to work very early, if you want to work very late, all of that sort of flexibility has now been built in, and that really helps. And we have come up with a few things from the focus groups that we had. So the focus groups, the last one was last year, where we worked with BITC and talked to females within the business and said to them, what do you think are the real barriers to career progression? What stops you going forward? Why do women leave, or why does their career stall, particularly around the sort of senior associate level? Senior associate level is probably sort of 8 years plus qualified. And some of the feedback, it was really useful feedback. When you ask for feedback and you get constructive feedback, it is always really helpful. But some of the feedback was quite surprising. One of the things that they said was that it was quite challenging because men didn't get the same family leave as women did. And therefore, the childcare diverted to the women, as historically had it done anyway. And that was one of the things Pinsent's looked at, and we sort of reviewed it, and we have come up with and implemented a new policy called the Global Family Leave Policy.
Okay.
So our Global Family Leave Policy, and I'm not sure if other firms have this. I don't believe that they have as yet, but this allows for anyone who has a new arrival to the family. Now, this is birth parents and non-birth parents. So it allows them to take 16 weeks or up to 16 weeks fully paid leave to look after the child. And this is all genders. And what this does is feed into our sort of overall approach to having a family-friendly firm. This is not just about one gender. This is about a family-friendly firm which accepts that now parental responsibilities are shared quite often, which is a great thing, and allows for that and encourages it. And it's been very interesting. A lot of men have actually taken this global family leave, are very they have found it to be incredibly helpful. They also, in some cases, have fed back and realized how much work goes on with a new child, and
which is no bad thing.
No bad thing. Sometimes it actually seems nicer coming back into the office. But that is an example of something that we have done where we took on board some feedback and we actually tried to develop it. Not everything that you try works, not everything. There's not one answer to the problem, unfortunately, but it's something that has helped. Another initiative that we've brought in to try and help is reciprocal mentoring. And the idea of this is to help with gender diversity, racial diversity, people from different cultures, so that you get to see how other people operate, their perceptions of the firm, the level that they're at. And quite often it's a senior person who works with a junior colleague, and not just works in the sense that they give them some work and delegate it, but they actually mentor them, and it's reciprocal. They learn lots from it. The person that they are mentoring learns a lot from it. And we have done this with people with different backgrounds, different genders, and find that the discussions that they have and the sort of things they come up with to try and break down barriers are really helpful. A practical example of reciprocal mentoring and the feedback that we had was a female senior associate had mentioned to her mentor, who was actually a senior male colleague, a member of the board, that she was really struggling to juggle everything, her children and the childcare arrangements and coming into work and doing all of that.
Yeah.
They swapped roles for the day.
Oh, how brilliant.
Which I would have to say was really good of him to take this on. I'm not quite sure how they arranged it, but they did. And he got to see it firsthand, what she had been saying about, the early morning school run. And I know a lot of men do things like this, but there was the early morning.
A lot still don't, though.
Yes, a lot still don't, or don't necessarily think that it's as stressful as it is.
Yes.
So dropping off the children on the early school run, going into work, not taking a break when you're working to try and fit everything into sort of compressed hours. Yeah. So not having the lovely conversations around the water cooler as the men were doing and finding out what was happening, then rushing off to pick the children up from school again, going home, then starting work again. And the feedback that we got from the man involved was it was very stressful. He didn't know quite how she'd managed it. And this was quite normal for an awful lot of women, but incredibly productive, because what that then feeds into are the agile and flexible working policies we have. And we're always, the fabulous HR people are always reviewing them and coming up with some suggestions and refining policies. There's a huge amount of support like that. Now, it doesn't necessarily get rid of the problem, but it helps because it gives you some support and it proves that you're just not rushing around doing everything on your own and there's no backup.
Well, it also sounds to me that it's a very open culture at Pinsent Masons, and you're open to change and you're open to feedback. And it sounds like the senior leadership team have got an open door policy and they're willing to learn. And it is about evolving. And mistakes do get made, but they're not mistakes; they're lessons, and you learn from them, don't you? So I do want to pick up on one thing, because I understand from speaking to your colleague that you have recently changed your bonus system. Yes. And in your remuneration policy, so that bonuses are no longer awarded based on billable hours. So yes. I think that sounds fascinating, and I don't know of another law firm doing that. So can you explain to me the rationale and the behind that and the value it has given to men and women across the firm? Absolutely. But particularly obviously women.
Yeah, it has been part of a wider discussion, and a discussion that has been going on in our organization for some time about performance and how you measure performance, and if someone is doing well, and if they should be given a bonus or not. And a lot of it was very much based, and there was one element of it historically that had been based solely around matter-related hours. Now, matter-related hours, everybody in a law firm, every fee earner anyway, has a target. We haven't done away with targets completely. I'm not sure, it's going to be very difficult for us to try and do that if that is the ultimate aim, because you need to be able to measure utilization and what people are doing. And in some cases, some people perform incredibly well using that metric. But it was felt that it was wrong, quite rightly, that you were getting a bonus simply for doing lots and lots of hours. So what the firm now looks at is your performance as a whole, because people have different roles, some of them, and traditionally this does still fall back to women. A lot of our females in the business would have some of these sort of additional roles with HR or additional roles with looking after a team. That was not always rewarded or recognized. So what we do now is have more, what we hope are more open and transparent conversations around the time when you're doing appraisals and reviews. Look at performance as a whole, not just your fees or not just the hours that you've done. And you don't simply get a bonus for the number of hours that you've done. There are various limbs to it, but it can be something to do with the additional things you have added to the firm. It can also be clients you bring in, or, someone who has brought in exceptional fees, but it is a much wider and more general sort of.
Well, I think that's lovely to hear, because quite often you always hear that women either put themselves forward or sort of get maybe dumped on or asked to do all the sort of the soft side of buying the cakes, organizing the team outings or whatever, and then that's extra work, which is incredibly important to growing and nurturing the culture of an organization, but then it doesn't get rewarded. But it sounds like it does, that would get recognized at Pinsons.
Yes, it does. And it still happens. And I have to be honest, I think women have to get better at saying no to certain things.
Yeah.
Because I think with a lot of things, and I have exactly the same impulses, you're asked to do something and you don't say, well, actually, I've already got this on and, I can't take this on or whatever. The art of saying no is something that we need to improve upon.
We all do. So what do we need to say yes to? So with Pinsons Masons, if we're going to end this lovely chat, and I could carry on talking to you for ages, what would be the key messages that you would like to land with the women in the 2 to 3 days community about the culture? How would you sum up the culture at Pinsons that you come and talk to your talent team about joining?
It's a very nice culture. We've just got in someone called a talent manager. And this again was an initiative brought in to make sure that we capture and recognize talent at a very early stage, that we look at gender, that we look at an open and transparent process. We're very lucky. Pinsons Masons has always been known for having a very open culture. It's a flexible firm. It's always trying to do better, and it's always trying to be more supportive. No firm is perfect, and there are lots of things we still need to do, but they are always open to change, and they're always open to new ideas, and they don't have a one-size-fits-all mentality, which is really good. So what I would say to people coming back to work who are slightly frightened of the idea of this big corporate model is, don't ever be afraid of that. Put yourself forward for things. Don't ever think it's not for you or it's not the right firm for you, because we don't have an idea that people have to go to a certain university or a certain background. In fact, we're very much against that idea. It should be completely inclusive. So I would just say, believe in yourself, have the confidence, and women should clients require women now to be involved in pitches, to be on teams. They very much like to have mixed teams acting for them, and I would say come along and get involved and don't be afraid of it.
Brilliant. Andrea, thank you very much. It's been a joy talking to you as always.